Welcome to Briefing Document. Here we will go over UFO stories and history. We will discuss the research into these events and you can decide if the stories are true or not, or need more details. Are you ready for this?
For today's project, we're going to talk about two groups many of you may have heard of. The first group is the Jason group, sometimes called the Jasons. And we're going to touch a little bit on the rumored Jason Society. Let's discuss something that's been mentioned in various circles for many years. In fact, at the September 9th, 2025 congressional hearings on UAP, a document was introduced into the congressional record that included language about this group. The group, the Jason Society, or sometimes known as the Jason Scholars. As you can see, this document outlines the Jason Society as being commissioned by President Eisenhower and being run by, at the time, the CIA Director Allen Dulles. Also Dr. Zbigniew Brzezinski and one Dr. Henry Kissinger. The mission was to, as you can see, sift through all the facts, evidence, technology, lies, and deceptions and find the truth of the alien question. The Jason Society was made up of 32 of the most prominent men in the U.S. And the biggest tidbit of info, that MJ-12 or Majestic 12 was a secret control group inside the Jason Society. That said, there has been no declassified documents or any other official documentation acknowledging the existence of the Jason Society. And just because something is read into or introduced into the congressional record does not mean it's factual. Now, Dr. Henry Kissinger's name has been thrown around for many years as possibly being a member of MJ-12 and or being one of the gatekeepers of information on the whole UFO mystery. There is, however, a Jason group, publicly acknowledged by the government and the corporation that manages it. The Jason Group was founded in 1960, some say 1959, as an independent group of elite scientists who provide, many times, classified analysis and advice on scientific and technical issues for the United States government, specifically the Department of Defense, Department of Energy, and the various intelligence agencies. There are some Jason reports that are unclassified that you can find on the internet, but many are still classified to this day. The name originally given the group by the Pentagon was Project Sunrise. Actually, it wasn't just the Pentagon. It was the Department of Defense, specifically the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA, who was a main customer for the Jasons. However, the wife of one of the original members disliked that name, Project Sunrise, and suggested the name Jason after Jason and the Argonauts, a mythical group of adventurers who embark on a mission to find the Golden Fleece. The Jason Group is made up of anywhere between 30 and 60 scientists from all over the United States. While the original group was focused primarily on physicists, Jason now includes biologists, chemists, engineers, and computer experts. Of the original group, many came from the Manhattan Project, so they were familiar with secrecy and classified projects. There were roughly 11 original members of Jason, or Project Sunrise. Some of the original members: Marvin Murph Goldberger, Keith Bruckner, Kenneth Watson, Charles Towns, and John Wheeler. The Jason Group basically self-renews, adding 2 to 5 members a year, some due to attrition, members leaving and retiring, etc. When a member of Jason leaves the group, or they arbitrarily add a new member, Jason is solely responsible for picking that new member to replace the departed one. That caused quite a bit of attention years ago between Jason and DARPA, when DARPA wanted to introduce their hand-picked scientist into Jason. Jason refused DARPA's request. As a matter of background, the Jason Group is managed by the MITRE Corporation, a not-for-profit corporation that manages more than a handful of federally funded research and development centers, FFRDCs. Now, there are many FFRDCs that are rumored, or some may even be acknowledged, as being involved in the UFO UAP legacy program. If you watch video projects done by UAP Gerb, you'll know that he has routinely named the MITRE Corporation as being one of the legacy UFO UAP companies hiding technology and or information gathered from years of crash retrievals from around the world. The MITRE Corporation is based in McLean, Virginia. However, they have offices in a few locations around the country. The Jason Group are paid roughly $1,200 per day during their project time. Each project costs around $500,000, again, managed through the MITRE Corporation. The Department of Defense pays for the projects through their contract with Jason. Other agencies pay on their own. Jason usually receives around $1.5 million from the Department of Defense and $2.25 million from the Department of Energy, and more from the three-letter agencies, totaling about $8 million per year. Many of the Jason scientists are university professors, so historically Jason has convened every summer, while the schools are out, to work on the projects they have been contracted for. They work on about 12 to 15 projects every summer. For years, they have gathered in La Jolla, California, a community within the city of San Diego, for multiple weeks every summer to work on these projects and reports. Now, the MITRE Corporation has 2 office locations in San Diego, California. One of which, interestingly enough, is inside the 22-acre compound headquarters of the General Atomics Company. General Atomics being famous for its drone manufacturing, but also for reportedly being part of the UFO UAP legacy program. This is the main entrance to the General Atomics headquarters in La Jolla. Located appropriately enough on General Atomics Way. You cannot see the MITRE Corporation building from the street. However, thanks to Google Aerial, you can see it's located somewhat in the middle of the compound. Specifically, Jason meets and resides in Building 29. This is the location where Jason meets every summer for a few weeks. As you can see from this document, Jason has meeting and residential requirements as part of their contract with the U.S. government. As mentioned earlier, Jason does contract work for DoD, DOE, and many of the three-letter agencies. Here is a declassified invitation from Jason to the CIA director at the time, William Webster, inviting him to a Jason planning meeting in 1987, and the letter from CIA Director Webster to Jason having to decline the invitation based on scheduling conflicts. The MITRE Corporation also has an office location in the Liberty Station area of the city of San Diego, not far from several U.S. Navy bases and Navy research laboratories. In March of 2019, the Jason Group received a letter from DARPA saying their contract would not be renewed. This was not too long after Jason refused DARPA's scientists to be part of the Jason Group. This caused quite a stir because Jason already had about 15 contracted projects scheduled for that summer. The Pentagon would not meet with Jason or the MITRE personnel and would not return phone calls. Finally, the head of the National Nuclear Security Administration, Lisa Gordon Haggerty, secured financing for Jason to continue its work through January 2020. Here's a video of a congressional budget hearing where Jason is brought up, and you can see Lisa Gordon Haggerty answering questions.
I have a number of things I want to ask you. Let me begin by, if you're familiar with the role that the Jasons have played, and possibly also the Naval Research Advisory Committee in terms of nuclear and other forms of scientific expertise.
I am.
You are familiar?
Yes.
How would you categorize their performance over the last 60, 70 years?
I can speak to 2 recent
We
studies.
can't quite hear you. Can
I'm sorry.
pull the microphone
Is that any better?
Yeah, that's better.
My apologies. So I can express to you my opinion on the 2 recent studies that were undertaken by Jasons, one of which was a tritium study. I found their reports to be fulsome and very, the members of Jasons being very knowledgeable about issues associated with our programs at NNSA. I can't speak to the history or the 60, 70 years of Jasons, but I can tell you that they are rich in history and their technical expertise is sound.
Were you aware that their contract has been summarily terminated by the Pentagon?
My understanding is that the Pentagon is doing something with their contract. They do manage the contract or administer the contract for Jason.
Doing something with the contract is a euphemism for termination?
My understanding, again, I haven't looked into it. I've actually asked my staff, Chairman, to look into it to see what's happening, because we do have some studies that we're undertaking with Jason, so we want to make sure that if there are some issues associated with contract management, that somebody handles that, because we do have some ongoing studies with Jason's.
In November 2020, the Department of Defense put out a request of proposal for a multi-year, approximately $50 million contract to manage the Jason Group. The MITRE Corporation, who had been the previous manager of Jason with a 5-year, $34.4 million contract, eventually was selected to continue to manage Jason for the duration of the new contract. Linda Moulton Howe, among others, has suggested that the Jason Group is part of the U.S. government's conspiracy to conceal information about UFO/UAP retrievals, technology, and alien encounters from the general public. She believes that Jason has conducted projects and reports on alien exchange programs, collaborations with extraterrestrials, alien abductions, and other paranormal activities. Without any concrete evidence, though, remember, many Jason projects are classified. Author Ann Finkbeiner wrote a book about the Jason Group titled The Jasons, The Secret History of Science's Post-War Elite, published in 2006. You can find it on Amazon. The Jason Group are still gathering every summer to work on their contracted projects. The next group we're going to talk about is the Aviary. Has a little bit of controversy about it, mostly because of some of the people involved with the Aviary, but we'll get there. As you will see, the story of the Aviary is very murky indeed. The exact timeline, details, and members are still a mix of truth and fiction. As we list the reported members, you'll see why the truth is hard to come by. More than a few reported members have a background in disinformation. In fact, were counterintelligence agencies during their careers. The Aviary was, and maybe still is, a group of current and former members of the intelligence community, the Department of Defense, and scientists who have some very high government clearances, all of whom had information about or were working with information regarding UFOs. Reportedly, this was not a government-sanctioned group, just a group of individuals who had a common interest in the UFO topic. The mission? To discredit any serious research in the UFO field. That said, there is other information out there that the Aviary was to coordinate data, to try and better understand the policies of MJ-12, to gain special influence by having this highly secretive information, and to see the big picture about UFOs and extraterrestrial contact on Earth, and to try and use this information to gain access to further secret information regarding UFOs and contacts. Still other reports are that the Aviary's mission was to let the general public know about the government's involvement with extraterrestrials and the technology gleaned from UFO recoveries. Even who coined the name the Aviary is in question. Some say it was William Moore and Jamie Shandera, who we will discuss shortly. Some say it was the original Aviary members themselves. Here's the audio from an interview with Dr. Bruce Maccabee, a reported member of the Aviary. This was done on the Spaced Out Radio podcast in November 2020. Dr. Maccabee discusses his understanding of the origins of the names in the Aviary and the Aviary itself.
I want to ask you right off the bat, one of the terms of where I learned your name as a budding journalist in this field is through the Aviary. Did you ever know you were part of the Aviary?
By acclamation, I was part of the Aviary. I didn't ask to be part of the Aviary. But the Aviary has got a big mythology associated with it. It sort of grew by itself. People who are interested in pursuing government cover-up very often got Aviary names if they interacted at all with Bill Moore and Jamie Chandray. The whole idea began in the early 1980s when, first of all, the publication of the book Roswell Incident alerted the cover-up guys that somebody was on the right track, saying that Roswell was a real crash. And not too soon after that book came out in the fall of 1980, Bill Moore, according to the story as I recall it, Bill Moore got a phone call from a secret agent. Many years we find out that this is a guy by the name of Richard Doty. And so anyway, Bill gets this phone call, and Bill told me that the caller told Bill that Bill was the only person who was barking up the right tree, you might say. And from then on, Bill got documents from that just sort of ended up coming in his mailbox one way or another. He had, at that time in the early 80s, two primary undercover sources of information, and he gave them names, Condor and Falcon. And that was the genesis of the Aviary. Condor and Falcon soon added on to them some other bird names of people who were supplying information to Bill Moore. I managed to do some work on the testimony of a guy by the name of Hawk, which is on my website. It's very interesting. If Hawk's testimony could be proven, that would have blown the cover-up right by itself. But anyway, various people who provided Bill and Jamie with information became birds one way or another. And pretty soon there are several dozen birds, I guess, in this aviary. No, there was never any meeting of the aviary. People think of the aviary as a working group of people, but the work that was done by the aviary people was basically whatever they were doing at the time. There wasn't any, at least I was not aware of any big coordinated effort on the part of so-called aviary members. It became really more of a laughing stock of the subject than an important group of people.
Did you think they could have given you a better name than Seagull?
Well, that was the natural. I was working for the Navy, so obviously that's where I got the name Seagull. I remember Bill telling me, laughing as he's saying it, he rattled off a couple of other people with bird names, and he said, and of course you're Seagull.
Well, that makes sense, working for the Navy and everything. But, a lot of people look at the Aviary as almost a super group, not only of scientists, but of researchers who really knew the truth behind ufology. You had, Rick Doty, who was a confirmed disinformation agent. You have other scientists, whether it's Hal Puthoff or, Jacques Vallée in there, who have, made a career off of discovering and understanding and learning about the phenomena. When you look at this entire board of the Aviary, I mean, this really is a who's who of very powerful people who potentially know the truth of what is going on.
They may know some of it, but the aviary aspect is really tending towards researching the government cover-up.
The year of origin for the aviary is up in the air. Some believe it was in the 1970s, the late 1970s, or in the 1980s. One thing is for sure. The disinformation campaign against Paul Benowitz, a scientist who set out to prove there was ongoing UFO activity at an Air Force base near his home in New Mexico, this was in 1980, and it was believed to have been orchestrated and conducted by members or future members of the Aviary. Let's get into the reported members of the Aviary. We must start with retired Colonel John Alexander, Aviary name Penguin, a U.S. Army Special Forces leader, a proponent of the development of non-lethal weapons, a counterintelligence operative, a disinformation specialist who has also rumored to be or have been involved in remote viewing, psychic warfare, and mind control projects. As a reminder to the viewers, Colonel Alexander was roundly booed at the 2011 MUFON Symposium when, during his presentation, he denied all government-related conspiracies and all claims of government silencing and/or harassment regarding the UFO topic. He's the author of the book Reality Denied, and Colonel Alexander was reportedly the head of the Aviary, and still may be if it still exists. Next, in no particular order, Dr. Christopher Kit Green, Aviary name Blue Jay. A former CIA employee, he received the CIA's National Intelligence Medal for work on a classified project from 1979 to 1983. In the 1960s, he was part of the committee that produced the Condon Report on UFOs. At the CIA, he was reportedly keeper of the UFO files at the CIA Weird Desk until 1983. Probably what he got the National Intelligence Medal for. Post-CIA, he is a neuroscientist and a forensic neuroimaging specialist. He was part of the Advanced Aerospace Weapons Systems Applications Program, OSAP, and as a part of that program, spent time at Skinwalker Ranch. He has dealt with hundreds of people who have been injured or have died after having interacted with UFOs. Ron Pandolfi, Aviary name Pelican. A career CIA man who worked in the office of the Deputy Director of Science and Technology. Pandolfi also reportedly sat at the Weird Desk, keeping the UFO files for the CIA, taking over that job from Kit Green. Pandolfi has been named by some as the real-life Fox Mulder from the X-Files. Dr. Harold Hal Puthoff, Aviary name Owl. Dr. Puthoff is known for his work in laser physics, zero-point energy, and probably most famously for remote viewing. He was part of the Stanford Research Institute program named Project Stargate. He was also part of the NIDS team and OSAP. He was also a co-founder of the To the Stars Academy. Ernst Ernie Kellerstrass, Aviary name Hawk. A retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, he worked at the Foreign Technology Division at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. He claimed to have seen both wreckage and bodies from the Roswell incident while at Wright-Patterson. He also was involved in both Project Aquarius and Project Blue Book. He was also thought to possibly be part of the group spreading disinformation. He passed away in March of 2021. Dr. Cecil B. Scott Jones, also known as C.B. Scott Jones. Aviary name Chickadee. Dr. Jones was in the Office of Naval Intelligence for 15 years. As a private contractor, he was involved in projects for the Defense Nuclear Agency, the Defense Intelligence Agency, the U.S. Army Intelligence and Security Command, and DARPA. He was also an early proponent of trying to get congressional hearings on UFO matters. He was also a point man for Lawrence Rockefeller on UFO matters, a proponent for disclosure. He passed away in January of 2023. Robert Collins, Aviary name Condor. Collins is a retired Air Force captain who worked as an intelligence officer with the Foreign Technology Division at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Some have questioned his motives in the information he has released about UFOs and extraterrestrials and believe he may be part of the disinformation campaign. He wrote a book, along with Richard Doty, titled UFOs Exempt from Disclosure, The Black World of UFOs. Richard Helms, aviary name Falcon. Former director of the CIA, Richard Helms had a long career in the CIA. He was part of the MK Ultra controversy, including helping shred documents related to MK Ultra. He was a staunch supporter of keeping secrets, no disclosure. He passed away in October of 2002. Dr. Bruce Maccabee, aviary name Seagull. Dr. Maccabee was an optical physicist who was a civilian employee of the U.S. Navy for many years, working at the Naval Surface Warfare Center in Maryland. He was also an avowed UFOologist, first working with NICAP, working in research and investigation with them until NICAP shut down in 1980. He also became a member of MUFON, becoming the state director for Maryland. He also helped establish the Fund for UFO Research. His research and investigation spanned many events, from the Kenneth Arnold sighting to the Tehran, Iran incident, to Gulf Breeze, to the Japan Airlines incident, to the Phoenix Lights, and many more. He was very much a proponent for disclosure. He passed away in May of 2024. Now, I saved this one for last. Richard Doty, aviary name Sparrow. Doty is one of the more controversial figures, not only in this group, but in UFOlogy in general. He had a 20-year career in the Air Force, including many years as a special agent for the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, AFOSI. In that position, he worked not only investigations, but counterintelligence. He was a central figure in the Paul Benowitz incident. Doty has admitted that he spread disinformation into the UFO community, not only with the Benowitz incident, but also passing disinformation to Linda Moulton Howe. He has readily admitted his disinformation program, but now seems to be somewhat of a whistleblower. Keeping in mind that counterintelligence applies both truth and fiction. Let's not forget that Lou Elizondo was also a counterintelligence agent, albeit for another branch of the military than Doty. Richard Doty has been one of the more active members of the Aviary to talk about the Aviary. John Alexander, Robert Collins, C.B. Scott Jones, and others have also briefly talked about the Aviary. Doty co-authored UFOs Exempt from Disclosure with Robert Collins. Here's an interview with Richard Doty, also a reported member of the Aviary, discussing his understanding of the Aviary and how it was structured, how the names came about, and things like that. This was on a video from the YouTube channel, The Awaken Zone.
Hello, my name is Richard Doty. I'm a former intelligence officer with the United States Air Force Office of Special Investigations. Today, we're going to discuss the Aviary, the unofficial UFO working group. It was formed in the late 1970s. A small group consisting of U.S. government officials with high security clearances. Everyone within the Aviary were government employees with a security clearance. The object of this group was to coordinate data regarding UFOs, or UAPs they call them now, and ET contacts. Everything that we knew, or everything that we wanted to know regarding UFOs, was filtered through various government agencies back then, primarily the Defense Intelligence Agency. But we were an unofficial working group that was trying to put one foot ahead of the other and keep track of the information that was being collected. And we also wanted to form an alliance with the MJ-12 group, working either alongside them or working with them. The Aviary always met in secure facilities, such as a CIA safe house in Vienna, Virginia, or other facilities around the eastern part of the United States. Most of the meetings were in the east, with the exception of a couple that were in Dayton, Ohio, and one in Vermont. Now, did we ever work or have meetings with the MJ-12 working group? No. We coordinated, had liaison with them, but we never actually worked with them. They never attended our meetings. So the names of the members of the MJ-12 group were not officially known to us, but some members of the group, some of the scientists, some of the key officials within our working group, or the Aviary, did know who the members of the MJ-12 group was. Now, the Aviary gave themselves code names, but the story behind that is Robert Collins, one of the members of the group, had a friend and a colleague. I had a friend and a colleague named Bill Moore, although Bill was never a member of the Aviary. Bill Moore had a friend by the name of Jamie Shandera, and they got together one night and knew who we were and named us, giving us those bird names. Why they did that, it was easier to keep track of us, and once we found out who we were as far as the bird names, we actually called ourselves those bird names when we had meetings. We developed policy and procedures for the group. We maintained absolute secrecy. Each Aviary had a CIAC card, which gave them access to above top secret information, special access programs dealing with ET contacts, although no Aviary member had authorization to conduct field operations except me. I was given the authority because I was an intelligence officer. I was given the authority to investigate things that the Aviary needed investigated. And so I was the only one within the Aviary that had investigative powers.
Now here's a few others rumored to be involved with the Aviary. Dr. Jack Verona, possibly Raven, a DoD employee who at one time worked on mind-altering electromagnetic weaponry, also researching psychic warfare. Dr. Jacques Vallée, possibly Partridge, a DoD employee working as a computer networks projects investigator, who previously had investigated UFOs for the French government. He worked with J. Allen Hynek and was also involved with NIDS and OSAP. Dr. Henry Kissinger, he was also rumored to be Raven. Senator Harry Reid, unknown Aviary name. General Albert Stubblebine, possibly known as Heron. And Dan Smith, possibly Chicken Little. Dan Smith, a civilian UFO researcher who worked as an intermediary between sources within the CIA and civilian UFO research groups, a proponent for disclosure. Jamie Shandera, possibly Woodpecker, a Hollywood film producer and associate of William Moore. Shandera is the one who received a film canister in the mail that contained the MJ-12 documents. He is a proponent for disclosure. As you can see, quite a plethora of intelligence and scientific minds involved or possibly involved. When doing research into the Aviary, you may find some of the Aviary monikers assigned to other individuals. What we've suggested here is what Richard Doty and others have admitted to. Take it for what it's worth. Around 1995 or so, it was reported that there was a rift in the Aviary, with a group of members pushing for disclosure on the UFO program, and a group wanting to keep everything under wraps as it has been, and continue with the disinformation. We know that the Aviary, or at least members of the Aviary, were involved in the disinformation plot against scientist Paul Benowitz. William Moore, a former Air Force AFOSI, who became a civilian UFO researcher, has admitted that he was approached by agents of the government to help with the Benowitz project. In return, for stringing Benowitz along with disinformation and also for providing disinformation to civilian research groups, Moore would be given access to highly secret UFO documents and information. At the July 1989 MUFON conference in Las Vegas, William Moore admitted his deception to the crowd, and he was not very well received after that. William Moore was co-author of the Roswell incident. He also, along with Jamie Shandero, was one of the ones who put out the MJ-12 documents out to certain UFO researchers. In 2005, Dr. Bruce Maccabee published Hawk Tales, his interviews with Ernst or Ernie Kellerstrass, so a member of the Aviary interviewing a member of the Aviary. You can find that interview and that document online. Did the Aviary really exist, and does it still exist today, in some capacity at least? Well, according to Richard Doty, yes it did, and yes it does.
Aviary exists today? Yes, it does. But in a completely different format. It's not connected to the government today or to any intelligence agencies. The Aviary today conducts operations to prepare for universal disclosure. All members of current Aviary, which calls themselves the Advanced Working Group, which I'm involved, are more open to the public and still coordinate activities with agencies, intelligence agencies, on the outside. Meaning, we don't go to the CIA headquarters or DIA headquarters at Bowling or NSA at Fort Meade or to OSI at Quantico. We are on the outside looking in. We have the ability to coordinate certain things with operatives within the intelligence community. My group, which we call the Advanced Working Group, contains intelligence officers, some that are still within the government, and most are outside the government, and some that had been an Aviary member before. Our objective is disclosure. We want disclosure just like everyone else wants disclosure. We want the truth about the United States government's involvement with UFOs, or UAPs as it's called now, or ET contacts, made public.
All right, so that's the story and the information available on the Jason Group and the Aviary. What are your thoughts? Let's have some dialogue.
Thank you for watching this episode of Briefing Document. Please hit the like button and consider subscribing to our channel, as it really helps. We will be discussing more stories in history, and we welcome your input. There is much ahead.